She documented her dream adventure online, smiling landscapes, cozy van life, and a love story for the world to see. But behind those picture-perfect posts, Gabby Petito was living a nightmare. By the time the truth came out, it was too late. Her body lay abandoned in the Wyoming wilderness, and the man who swore to protect her was already on the run. This is the story the internet couldn't look away from. Welcome to Vic's Crime Stories, where the cases you think you know aren't as simple as they seem. From twisted mysteries to heartbreaking betrayals, we go beyond the headlines. So turn off the lights, and let's begin. Gabby Petito was the kind of girl who lit up every room she walked into. Bright-eyed, full of dreams, and endlessly creative, she had that rare energy that made people want to be around her. She grew up in Blue Point, New York, a small town where everyone knew each other, where life moved at a slower, kinder pace. Gabby loved photography, adventure, and the idea of living freely, no rigid schedules, no walls closing in. That's why, when she met Brian Laundrie, the idea of hitting the road in a van, exploring the country together, felt like the perfect escape. At first, it was all sunsets and campfires. They documented their journey on social media, Gabby's Instagram filled with sweeping landscapes, cozy van setups, and the kind of love story that made followers sigh. Brian was quiet, intense, the kind of guy who seemed content to let Gabby shine. But those who knew them saw the cracks. The way his grip on her arm was just a little too tight when he thought no one was looking. The way her laughter sometimes sounded forced, like she was trying to convince herself everything was fine. The van life wasn't just freedom, it was isolation. No neighbors to hear raised voices. No friends to notice the way Gabby's texts became shorter, more vague. Just the two of them, alone for thousands of miles, in a space barely bigger than a closet. And then there was that day in Moab, Utah. The police body cam footage tells its own story, Gabby, visibly shaken, admitting she'd been fighting with Brian. The officers called it a mental health crisis, sent them on their way with a warning. No one asked the right questions. No one saw what was coming. By late August, Gabby's family knew something was wrong. Her texts didn't sound like her anymore. Then, silence. Meanwhile, Brian was back in Florida, alone, driving Gabby's van, refusing to say a word about where she was. When her parents reported her missing, the world took notice. Not just because a beautiful young woman had vanished, but because the man who claimed to love her wouldn't even pretend to look for her. And then, the discovery. Gabby's body, left alone in the wilderness of Wyoming. The coroner's report was brutal, manual strangulation. A violent, intimate way to die. While her family grieved, Brian disappeared into the Florida swamps, only to be found weeks later, dead by his own hand. But not before leaving behind a note, a confession scribbled in desperation. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a reckoning. How many times had the signs been ignored? How many times had the system failed someone like Gabby? Her story forced people to look closer, to ask harder questions. Because Gabby Petito deserved more than just headlines. She deserved justice. And this is only the beginning of the story. The road trip started like so many others, full of promise, excitement, and that giddy feeling of freedom. Gabby and Brian's van was packed tight with camping gear, cameras, and all the little comforts that make a home on wheels. Their social media showed the highlights, breathtaking sunsets, cozy nights in the van, the kind of adventurous love story people envied. But the unposted moments told a different story. There were signs, if anyone had known where to look. Witnesses later recalled seeing them arguing fiercely at a coffee shop in Utah, Brian's face dark with anger while Gabby tried to calm him down. Another time, at a campground, a fellow traveler noticed Gabby seemed nervous, jumpy almost, while Brian controlled every move they made. These weren't just normal couple squabbles, there was something unsettling in the air between them. Then came August 12th in Moab, Utah. The police body cam footage shows Gabby crying hysterically, her hands shaking as she tells officers they'd been fighting. Brian sits cool and collected, explaining how Gabby was crazy and had hit him. The officers saw a distressed young woman and a calm young man, and they made a judgment call, separating them for the night, calling it a mental health break. They never asked the right questions. They never saw what was really happening behind Brian's composed smile. As August dragged on, the tension in that van must have been unbearable. On the 27th, staff at the Mary Piglet's restaurant in Jackson, Wyoming would later tell police about a violent argument, Brian screaming at Gabby, slamming doors, behavior so alarming the manager nearly called the police. That same day, Gabby's mother received a strange text, "No service in Yosemite." Except they weren't in Yosemite. They'd never planned to go to Yosemite. That text, experts would later determine, was almost certainly sent by Brian. Then, silence. By September 1st, Brian was back in Northport, Florida, alone. Driving Gabby's van. Living in Gabby's house. But Gabby was nowhere to be found. When her parents desperately tried to contact her, then tried to contact Brian, they were met with stone-cold silence. Brian hired a lawyer. Brian refused to speak. Brian went for long bike rides and acted like nothing was wrong, even as Gabby's face began appearing on every news channel in America. The road trip that began with so much hope had turned into something unthinkable. Every mile marker, every campsite, every Instagram post now looked different in hindsight. The happy couple the world thought they knew had been hiding terrible secrets in plain sight. And by the time anyone realized how bad things had gotten, it was already too late for Gabby. The worst part? None of this had to happen. The signs were there all along. The days stretched on with no word from Gabby. No texts. No calls. Just silence. Her family knew in their gut something was terribly wrong. This wasn't like her. Gabby always checked in, always stayed connected. By September 11th, they couldn't take the silence anymore. They filed a missing persons report. And just like that, the world took notice. Social media exploded with the hashtag #FindGabby. Strangers became amateur detectives, scanning through her Instagram posts, analyzing every detail of her last known whereabouts. News stations picked up the story, broadcasting Gabby's smiling face across the country. There was something about this case that grabbed people. Maybe it was the heartbreaking contrast between her joyful social media presence and her sudden, unexplained disappearance. Maybe it was the disturbing image of Brian returning home without her, refusing to say a word. Then, on September 19th, the news no one wanted to hear. Search teams found a body in Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest, near where Gabby and Brian had last been seen. Dental records confirmed the worst: it was Gabby. The coroner's report would later reveal she had been strangled to death. Manual strangulation. A brutal, personal way to kill someone. This wasn't some random act of violence, this was intimate. This was someone she knew. This was someone she trusted. While Gabby's family collapsed under the weight of their grief, Brian Laundrie vanished. His parents said he went for a hike in the Carlton Reserve near their Florida home and never came back. The same parents who had refused to answer Gabby's family's desperate calls. The same parents who had secured a lawyer for their son before Gabby was even reported missing. As search teams combed through the swampy Florida wilderness looking for Brian, the public outrage grew. How could this keep happening? The FBI joined the search. News helicopters circled overhead. Every day brought new theories, new rumors, new frustrations. Then, on October 20th, another grim discovery: partial human remains in the reserve, along with a backpack and notebook belonging to Brian. Dental records confirmed it was him. The medical examiner would later determine he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But before he took his own life, Brian left something behind: a written confession in that notebook. While the full contents have never been made public, authorities confirmed he admitted responsibility for Gabby's death. After weeks of silence, after all the lies and evasion, the truth finally came out. But it came too late for Gabby. This should have been a love story. This should have been an adventure. Instead, it became a tragedy that would haunt everyone who heard it. A young woman full of life, snuffed out by the person who claimed to love her. A family left with unbearable grief. And questions, so many questions, about how this could have been prevented. The search for Gabby may have ended in those Wyoming woods, but the search for answers was just beginning. The discovery of Brian Laundrie's remains in that Florida swamp should have brought closure. Instead, it only deepened the mystery. When investigators found his backpack and notebook, waterlogged but still legible, they got their first real glimpse into his final days. That notebook contained words that would change everything: an admission, a confession, though the exact contents remained shrouded in legal secrecy. What we do know is this: Brian finally told the truth, but only when there was no one left to hear it but the trees and the murky water. The Laundrie family's actions during this time raised more questions than answers. They had hired an attorney before Gabby was even reported missing. They remained silent while the Petito family begged for information. Then, after Brian disappeared, they waited days before reporting him missing. When they finally did speak, it was through lawyers, carefully crafted statements that did little to ease public outrage. Later, they would sue the local police department, claiming the release of private information about Brian's disappearance violated their rights. To many watching, it felt like salt in an already gaping wound. Meanwhile, the media frenzy reached unbearable heights. News vans camped outside the laundry home. True crime enthusiasts dissected every frame of Gabby and Brian's YouTube videos. Social media became a battleground of theories and accusations. Some asked important questions about domestic violence and how the system failed Gabby. Others turned the tragedy into entertainment, speculating wildly about what might have happened in those final moments. The line between seeking justice and creating spectacle became dangerously blurred. Legal experts pored over the case, pointing to critical moments where intervention might have changed everything. That day in Moab when police pulled them over, why didn't they see what was really happening? Why didn't they ask the right questions? Friends and family members came forward with stories about Brian's temper, his controlling behavior. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs leading to tragedy. But no one connected them in time. Then there were the theories that refused to die. Some wondered if Brian had helped during those weeks he was missing. Others questioned whether there was more to the story: financial troubles, hidden arguments, secrets yet uncovered. The truth is, we may never know everything that happened between Gabby and Brian in those final days. Some questions remain buried with them, lost in the Wyoming wilderness and the Florida swamps. What we do know is this: a vibrant young woman lost her life in the most brutal way imaginable. A family was left with grief no parent should ever have to bear. And a nation was forced to confront uncomfortable truths about love, control, and how often we miss the warning signs until it's too late. The story of Gabby Petito didn't end with that confession in a notebook. It lives on in every conversation about domestic violence, in every missing persons case that gets attention because of what happened to her, in every family that watches their loved ones a little more closely now. The tragedy became a lesson. But at what cost? In the quiet after the storm, when the news vans packed up and the headlines faded, Gabby Petito's story left behind something more important than true crime fascination. It left us with hard questions we can no longer ignore. Her death became a wake-up call about domestic violence that shook the nation. That police bodycam footage from Moab? Officers saw a crying girl and a calm boyfriend, and they got it exactly backwards. Experts now use it in training programs to show how easily warning signs get missed. The way Brian controlled the narrative that day, how Gabby blamed herself for their fight, these are textbook patterns of abuse. The Gabby Petito Foundation, started by her heartbroken family, works tirelessly to make sure no other victim gets overlooked this way. They push for better police training, support domestic violence shelters, and keep Gabby's name alive as a force for change. But here's the uncomfortable truth that lingers: Gabby's case went viral while thousands of others never do. In the same month she disappeared, nearly 100 other women of color went missing in America. Their names didn't trend on Twitter. Their faces didn't blanket cable news. This ugly double standard has a name: missing white woman syndrome, and Gabby's tragedy forced us to confront it head-on. Her family, to their credit, has used their platform to spotlight other missing persons cases that didn't get the same attention. The cruel irony? The very things that made Gabby's story go viral are what make it so hauntingly common. The Instagram-perfect couple hiding misery behind smiles. The charming boyfriend with a violent streak no one wants to see. The system that fails to protect victims until it's too late. We watched this play out in real time, and it forced millions to ask, would I recognize these red flags in my own life? Gabby should be alive today. She should be posting sunset photos from some new adventure, planning her wedding, laughing with her family. Instead, her legacy becomes teaching us the lessons that could have saved her. To trust our gut when something feels wrong. To speak up when we see someone in trouble. To demand better from the systems meant to protect us. Her story isn't just about how she died. It's about how we can honor her by paying attention, really paying attention, to the people around us. Because the next Gabby is out there right now, smiling for the camera while someone chips away at her light. And this time, maybe we'll see it before it's too late. The tragedy is written. But the change it inspires? That part is still up to us. Now I want to hear from you. After everything we've covered today, every detail, every warning sign, every heartbreaking moment, what do you think? Could this tragedy have been stopped? Was there a moment when someone should have stepped in? Maybe you've seen similar situations in your own life. That friend who suddenly stopped showing up to gatherings. That coworker who always made excuses for their partner's behavior. These stories are happening all around us, every single day. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Not just about Gabby's case, but about how we can all do better at recognizing these patterns. Your perspective matters here. Maybe you've got a theory we haven't covered yet. Maybe you've lived through something similar. This isn't just true crime entertainment, these conversations can actually save lives. If you've made it this far, I know Gabby's story has gotten under your skin like it did mine. That's why I hope you'll stick around. On this channel, we don't just retell crimes, we dig deep into the human stories behind them. The warning signs we missed. The systems that failed. The lessons we can't afford to ignore. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell, because next week we're tackling another case that will change how you see the world. Another story where the truth was hiding in plain sight. Another victim who deserves to have their story told right. Until then, pay attention to the people around you. Really look at them. Listen to what they're not saying. Because sometimes, the most important clues aren't found in evidence rooms or police reports. They're in the everyday moments we're all too busy to notice. See you in the comment section.